Hey, it's Ed Burns. Check out Public Morals, my new show about New York City cops in the 1960s and the vices they managed. Tuesday, August 25th at 10/9 Central, only on TNT.
We're coming to you from the DraftKings.com podcasting studios. DraftKings.com, America's one-day fantasy sports site, where it's like a new season every time you play. DraftKings.com.
Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNRadio.com.
Welcome to the right time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. You can send me a tweet at the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. That is at Bomani_Jones. And are you people happy now? You got some football. It was like a taste of football. It was football that came last night. It was the Hall of Fame game, and really your first whiff of the football of the year. You guys seem to be clamoring for a whiff of that football. It got a 6.9. Shannon, a 6.9?
That's a lot of clamoring.
And how were the people rewarded? How were you 6.9? I don't know how many people that is. I'm just telling you 6.9 is high. How were they rewarded with a 14-3 game where Landry Jones played the whole damn thing? Whose idea was that? Like, is Roethlisberger hurt? I honestly don't know. I don't really pay attention to this stuff until I have to. Shanny's not hurt. He just didn't play?
Yeah, he's not. They have 5 preseason games. He wasn't playing in this one.
But he doesn't play Canton? He only plays arenas? He doesn't play concert halls? Is that what it is? That's right. He only plays arenas. He is not playing a venue as small as the stadium in Canton. You got to be kidding me. So y'all watch 4 quarters of Landry Jones. I didn't turn that game on once. I figured Le'Veon Bell wasn't going to be playing. He can play in the preseason, though, can he? You know, he had that whole situation with the reefer.
Yeah, he's good for the preseason. He's
just going to miss those first 2 games?
Yeah.
A little bummed out that LeGarrette Blount doesn't play for them anymore. You know what I call them? Red meth. They're red meth. In fact, they're kind of like red meth now. They're in different groups. They live in different places, but they'll always be a pair. Look, man, you get pulled over in your car with your homeboy smoking weed, and y'all play the same position on the same team, y'all become red and meth. Le'Veon Bell is Red Man, the more talented one who has more longevity and is, more of a dynamic sort of MC, as opposed to LeGarrette Blount, who is Method Man, who seems like he should be better than he is. He has the raw skills that you would prefer for a guy to have, even the level of charisma, all your measurables, but never can quite put it just can't quite make it work. But just as LeGarrette Blount has his hurdle, Method Man has the what the blood clot. You know, that was his thing. That right there. It's a trademark move. You had no idea I'd be able to pull that off right there, did you?
Yeah, so we call LeGarrette Blount Iron Lung now, huh?
That's right, the Iron Lung. That's right. And I'm not going to lie to you. I feel like I deserve a round of applause for that right there. Like, I feel like that was the sort of analogy you're not going to get anywhere else but right here. But, yes, 6.9 rating on that game. Teddy Bridgewater was 5 for 6. That sounds halfway decent. Browns fans, how do you feel when you turn on your television and you see Teddy Bridgewater ball? And you're just hoping that your quarterback stays out of trouble. How's that feel? How's that working out? I'm going to tell you this right now. I do not think that Teddy Bridgewater is going to turn out to be a great quarterback, right? I think that Teddy Bridgewater will be a good quarterback and will probably be a very good quarterback, maybe even a very, very good quarterback. But after the insanity that surrounded him in that draft that year and how he fell in that draft, anytime Teddy Bridgewater does anything well, I'm going to rub it in your stupid faces. Every single one of you, I am going to rub it into your stupid faces. You know I'm going to rub it into your stupid faces because all at once for Teddy Bridgewater, the rules changed. Right? Suddenly the pro day mattered more than it had ever mattered before. Suddenly being a drop back passer just wasn't that big of a deal anymore. Like suddenly the ability to read defenses in a precocious way, none of that mattered anymore at that point. All of a sudden, what did I hear about? Skinny knees, and what was it, the hand size?
His hands were small, and he threw without a glove on, and
Yeah, Johnny Manziel was like, yo, he's barely 6 feet tall, but he's got big hands. It's really like he's 6'5". Nah, bro, it's like he's 5'11".
But he had the greatest pro day that some have ever seen.
Yeah, let me tell you something about Johnny Manziel and that whole idea they had that year that his 5'11" was really like 6'5" because of those hands. You go ask some women walking past him on the street if 5'11" and 6'5" are the same thing. You let me know, right? Yeah, you go tell some woman that 5'11" and 6'5" are really the same thing. Nah, bro, it's not what it's gonna be.
I got a feeling that you're gonna get some tweets from some guys asking you about your hand size.
Yeah, they just might. That's why I'm going to skip the hand size part and just keep talking about Johnny Manziel like not being very tall. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, 5'11" is cool. Don't get me wrong. When you go date a tall woman and tell her 5'11" is the same thing as 6'5", tell that to her when she got to wear flats to make sure that you don't feel intimidated. Anyway, 888-729-3776 is the telephone number. I just want to let you guys know, kind of as a programming note, a public service announcement of sorts. Don't call me asking about stuff that happened in a preseason game. Like, if it's some spectacular highlight, maybe I might come around it. But I feel like all of us at some point just have to say no, right? The NFL has got us. Like, I think we all have to acknowledge in large measure that we are loyal to the NFL, even those of us who don't especially want to be loyal to the NFL. We are loyal to the NFL in a way that is just a wee bit problematic, right? Like, for example, my brother, no, it was my sister who brought this up once. And she was like, can you imagine imagine that everything that is the case in football was the way that it was, except we put it in some African country, right? With all the fervor and all the passion and everything else and this violent, brutal game and all of that, right? So we dropped that off in Africa, and then we send National Geographic over there, right? And we tell National Geographic to describe the game and describe the things that happen. That would let people know just how seriously we take this football. Like that's what it would do it. The men dress in the traditional garb with adequate protection to protect them until the next game, but not enough to save their lives. You know? The native women adorn the sideline, wearing short, skimpy outfits, hoping to catch the attention of the amorous males. Like, that's what it would be. Like, I'm telling you, man, you would have a full understanding of the way that we take it way too seriously. Because it got a 6.9. Just the idea of football. You don't even know who those people are. Landry Jones played. I didn't know he was still in the league. I feel like after Landry Jones played 4 quarters of that preseason game, Ben Roethlisberger agent should have called the Steelers and been like, yo, I mean, don't forget. Like, this is what it could be for you. It happened to the Colts.
And Landry Jones is the second string.
Yes, the second string. I don't think that Oklahoma ever intended for Landry Jones to start. Like, I don't think when he was there that they're playing. I mean, it worked out halfway decent, but I don't think they ever intended for him to start. He's in the league. I mean, dude, you know how many dudes sitting outside on the sideline right now looking up and seeing Landry Jones is in the league, and they're like, dog, what? Like, what do I have to – what did I do wrong? Like, Josh Freeman's like, Landry Jones in the league, and I'm not. And I don't even know if Josh Freeman's supposed to be in the league. I'm just telling you that that's what he's saying right now. Hell, Aaron Brooks is looking on television being like, you see how they do? You see how they do? I once led the league in touchdown passes. But, yeah, I ain't watching no preseason football. It's just not – it's not meant to be watched. I'm sure it serves a purpose for the people who are participating in the games, but I just ain't that thirsty. It's not that important. Shannon, you watch them all, don't you?
I may or may not have DVR'd it.
DVR'd it? You knew Adrian Peterson wasn't going to be playing in that game, right?
Yeah.
Like, you knew the actual Hall of Fame thing was the night before. You weren't expecting speeches or anything, were you?
No. Gonna watch it, though.
For what?
I'm into personnel.
Maybe you're into personnel. I mean, let me tell you about the personnel. Mike Kafka was 7 for 10.
Eagles legend, Mike Kafka.
You know how much money he's managed to make without ever having to get hit? Like, he's winning the game right now. He's like those McCowns. Like Josh McCown right now is finally starting to earn that money, but their dollar-to-hit ratio is like the stuff of NFL dreams. Like, only kickers have better dollar-to-hit ratios than those McCowns.
And McCown's like 36.
Yes. And they talk about he's not really old because he hadn't played that many games. Let me tell you something. I ain't played no NFL games, and I turned 35 in a couple of weeks. And let me tell you something. I'm 35, dog. That 35 ain't nothing like, but all it's like is 35.
It's a solid 35.
It's a solid 35. It is easily divisible by 5. Like, it is right. Like, I feel like I need to stretch during the break.
Bomani.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. That's the Rottweiler. Shannon, you pointed out something you saw, you heard about, rather, in the preseason game with the Vikings. Who was still playing in the second quarter?
Cordell Patterson was returning kickoffs in the second quarter of the game.
Wasn't he a first-round pick?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, man. If you play in the NFL and your salary got 2 commas, you can't be out there in the second quarter of an NFL preseason game, especially not out here returning kicks. Like, let me tell you what you got out there as it sounds to me. If it's Cordell Patterson, former first-round pick, returning kicks, that is Cordell Patterson having 10 men come toward him, all of whom have one goal. I got to make a name for myself. Like, how much that team think about you if they got you running kickoff duty in the second quarter? You got to impress somebody to make the team.
Like, it'll be one thing if he was out there running traditional wide receiver routes and doing those kind of things. That's fine. Yeah, he needs to work on his route running anyway. Sure. But he out there returning kicks, though. That's the one thing we know he can do well.
Right. He out there with a bunch of dudes who wish they still had a place for the wedge buster. You remember they used to have the wedge buster?
Remember those good old days we used to have the wedge buster?
Dude, first of all, the wedge, like the idea of being the wedge buster, I'm sorry, you got to quit, right? Like, they asked you to be the wedge buster. I'm not doing that. There's no way in the world. There guys talking about how they love being the wedge buster in high school. Can you imagine having to be the NFL wedge buster? Like, there are 3 guys with their arms locked, and my job is just to run into them. Like, not block them, right? Run into them. Like, nobody's job on defense in the NFL is just to flat out run into somebody. There are 3 guys right here, and I'm so desperate for work, I'm going to hurdle myself into them. Nah, couldn't be me, bruh. Couldn't be me. 888-729-3776 is the telephone number. The Panthers had a fight in training camp today, and I think too much is made of training camp fights. I think what's happened with training camp fights and the reason they become stories is just because we now have video that is more easily transmitted and in these smaller bites, and people like to watch fights, right? And training camp fights, quite honestly, are pretty guilt-free. Like, I mean, nobody's really going to get hurt. First of all, in a football fight, generally speaking, nobody's really going to get hurt. Has anybody ever really got hurt in a training camp fight outside of Stephen Davis? You remember that? Well, Michael Westbrook, who got like 8 black belts?
Well, it was that one time, I don't know if you want to necessarily call it a fight. It was that one time Steve Smith and Ken Lucas, and he broke. And he snuck him from behind.
I don't feel like fight is the appropriate word. Snuck him. He snuck him. He snuck him. Yeah. Did he sneak that other guy in training camp?
I think probably.
Yeah.
Like, how appropriate is it that we're talking about training camp fights on the day that Steve Smith announced that he's going to retire?
But how crazy is it also? It does don't get me wrong. I don't want no parts of Steve Smith. Like, I ain't saying anything about Steve Smith not being tough. I am saying, though, that much of our belief in Steve Smith's toughness is about him beating up dudes that weren't looking. Like, that's a very interesting dichotomy because normally we frown upon that sort of thing. But the other thing about Steve Smith is, well, he is a football player and he is under 5'10". And those are the last guys on earth that you want to try.
Ice up, son. Ice up.
Yeah, man. In the words of the great philosopher Marshall Mathers, do you have any clue what I had to do to get here? I don't think you do. That's what 5'10" and under in the NFL is telling you. And here's your verification of how true that is. It ain't even in the NFL, Shannon. Nate Robinson. Like, people forget, Nate Robinson is a football player. He was a high school running back. He was a defensive back in college, and he's the dude in the NBA that's ready to fight at all times. By the way, something funny before we move on. Speaking of short people. Some dude named Chad is in my Twitter mentions right now, and apparently he took umbrage with me talking about short dudes. Not really, I wasn't talking about short dudes. You know, I was saying that nobody thinks 5'11" and 6'5" are the same thing. And this guy says to me, how tall are you? I say, enough. And he says, it's a cop-out. I was like, dude, I'll block your shot from here. He says, in your dreams, stick to the radio. Like, somehow he has decided that I am short. Short people be bad. He catch me looking for somebody to commiserate with. Like, I don't know if this is true, but I know somebody who said once they saw Muggsy Bogues out with his partners, and there was a bunch of dudes driving Benzes, and they was all the size of Muggsy Bogues.
Muggsy was a big man, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Muggsy take the ball in the post when he played with his partners. Look, if I'm Muggsy Bogues, I ain't hanging with nobody that's taller than me. Why would I? That's my whole life. I got money now. You know, it just be a bunch of little dudes rolling with me. Y'all might all be the same height, but ain't never again am I sitting in the middle of the back seat. Never again in my life.
The comparison I like to make with Steve Smith, though, is Miss Sophia from The Color Purple. Because it seems like Steve Smith, all his life, he had to fight.
Yeah. See, I don't know how all his life did he have to fight, or did much of his life he choose to do so?
Say Miss Sophia.
I feel like the last time that Steve Smith had to fight was longer ago than the last time that Steve Smith actually fought. Like, it's not really obligatory at this point. It's just kind of, like, it becomes habitual. Like, it's just kind of what he does. That being said, I want no parts of Steve Smith. None. Like, I'm trying to think. Like, and the problem with Steve Smith is, and I've given up on talking about Cam this segment. We'll get to it. The problem with Steve Smith in this regard is, like, so what would Steve Smith have to do to make you, like, square up with him?
Yeah, he would have to insult one of my kids, probably.
But the problem is, if you don't square up with him, he doesn't have any respect for you. But he's ready to fight. Like, he woke up today ready to fight. Like, I wake up every day, and before I leave my house, I get my keys, just in case I want to come back into my house, right? I'm ready to come back into my house. The same way I get my keys to indicate that I'm ready when it's time to come back into my house, Steve Smith is ready to fight. Like, it's really no different than the readiness that I display by carrying my keys with me. It's exactly the same thing. So if Steve Smith come break bad with you and say something sideways, now you got to square up with Steve Smith because there's no telling what'll happen if you turn around.
Because he's not above sneaking you.
No. The fight starts when Steve Smith says that the fight starts. The fight does not start when you become aware of the fight. Steve Smith has been waiting all day to fight. He can't wait any longer. When the time to fight has come, there is no time for him to wait for you. This is what he woke up for.
The fight is like Christmas morning for him.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. There's also the great dichotomy of Steve Smith having such soft hands as a receiver, but clearly hard, heavy hands in real life. Like, how do you have hands of stone and hands of feathers all at the same time? Like, how do you pull that off? He's done it. It's pretty impressive. He could catch a 95-mile-an-hour fastball from a quarterback, then he'll slap you in the face. You feel like somebody hit you with a 2x4.
Bomani.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. All guests joined us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, including our next guest. He covers the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. I guess we're going to start calling him a friend of a program now that he's been on here twice. His name is Jonathan Jones. John, what's going on?
Hey, man, just chilling. Appreciate you having me on.
No, man, no problem, man. What's up with your quarterback out there fighting in practice, man?
Look, you see fights and it happens in training camp, though. You know how the heat could get to you down there in Spartanburg, South Carolina. But look, it wasn't even hot today. And it wasn't, some second-string linebackers kind of going at it. this was the $103 million man getting into it with an up-and-coming cornerback that had kind of been bubbling up for the past few days. These guys have been jawing back and forth at each other. Honestly, I'd be lying if I said I was a little surprised that it happened between these two. I thought that they just kind of yap until the regular season, but that it finally happened. Pretty surprising.
Well, how often is it that after throwing an interception, a quarterback who is wearing a red non-contact jersey tries to be the one to lower the boom?
You know, Cam always does that. He does that a lot in games. You know, we go back, and obviously in games, sometimes quarterbacks get chased, but then they're just kind of jogging, trying to play off the string. Cam actually goes down and hawks it down and tackles him out of bounds. And so it wasn't all that surprising. I've seen him kind of give chase, and sometimes he does so playfully. In this case, I think he was trying to do that a little bit. Now, he did not like the fact that he threw that interception. The pocket kind of collapsed on him, and Josh was off to the races. But what Cam took exception to was Josh kind of gave him a lot of a stiff arm right in the face mask, like fingers curled around the face mask. And so when that happened, Cam kind of shoved him. They shoved each other back, and that's when Josh shoved him and pushed his helmet off, and that's when they went to the ground.
All right, we're talking to John Jones of the Charlotte Observer. And before we get to what exactly happened with that fight, we have to remember that in Cam Newton's first game, he threw an interception to Darrell Washington of the Arizona Cardinals, and Darrell Washington was running that back, and Cam ran at him, and Darrell Washington slid like Cam was the linebacker, and he was the quarterback. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. It's a big dude running after you.
Yeah, and you know what? He's done that many times. I think he did that again at Arizona 2 years later. He goes after guys. He absolutely does, and he's 6'5", 245 pounds, really not an inch of fat on him. So, yeah, and Josh Norman at 6'3", about 215. You know, if the helmets aren't on and Cam's able to swing, I think I'm probably going to take Cam at that.
All right, now you mentioned that Josh Norman got his fingers in Cam's face mask and all of that. That sounds like something, even with Cam trying to make the tackle, that does not happen very often to the quarterback. Did anybody talk to Josh Norman about, hey, man, that dude's worth too much money for this nonsense?
Yeah, so, you know, we weren't able to talk to either one of them. We certainly tried. I shouted out a couple questions to Cam, and he didn't respond, and neither one of them were made available. But, you know, Josh is a guy who's trying to become an elite cornerback. He had a very good season last year. Against Julio Jones, he held him to 10 catches for 117 yards. Now, usually 10 catches for 117 yards in a game for Julio Jones is just any other game. Those are two games that I'm talking about, Julio Jones going up against Josh Norman for 10 catches and 117 yards. So Josh had a very good season last year. If he can put together a second consecutive season, then we can start talking about it because he's going to be in a contract year. But right now he's on that next tier, and he's trying to work his way up. So he looks across the way, he sees Cam, the $100 million man who's trying to work his way up and be an elite quarterback. And he thinks of himself as an elite cornerback. He said so himself a couple weeks ago down in Spartanburg. So these two guys have something to prove to each other, or at least feel that way. And so that's why Josh, I think, went a little extra.
All right, we're talking to John Jones of the Charlotte Observer. And, of course, it's early into camp. They haven't even played a preseason game. But how has Cam looked so far?
You know, he's looked okay. There have been a few interceptions, and look, the defense is further along than the offense. This defense is better than this offense, number one, but number two, the defense is further along in the playbook. And so, like, you know, I see these reports out of Tennessee. Marcus Mariota hasn't thrown an interception yet in training camp. Well, I don't really know if he's taken that many shots. I'd be very surprised if he is. I think training camp's when you should be trying some things out. You should be throwing some interceptions. I had someone ask me today, sounds like Cam's been throwing a lot of picks. Well, yeah, but I don't think there's anything in science or, you know, anyone's looked up and said, oh, yeah, this certainly translates to the regular season if they throw a lot of interceptions on 7-on-7s in August. So, you know, Cam's been okay some days. He's been very good some other days. And then today, it was just a pretty average day for Cam.
All right, talking to John Jones of the Charlotte Observer. One question about this team has been the offensive line. They came into last season basically with an all-new offensive line, and I didn't mean that in no kind of good way. How are they looking this year?
They're looking all right. Michael Orr had a really rough day the first day in pads at left tackle, and he's gotten a lot better since. A quiet day for Michael Orr is a good day. If you don't hear his name, that's very good. Ryan Khalil in the interior of that line. They got Trey Turner from LSU. Their right guard at left guard, they got a diamond in the rough, Andrew Tolwell, who was undrafted last year for some reason that no one really knows why. And the interior of the line is stout and solid. And then at right tackle, an unknown guy, Mike Rimmers. It's the first and maybe only time anyone's ever said his name on this program. But Mike played very well in December and into January for the Panthers last year, and they're hoping he can continue that. But a very good test, at least for the first quarter of Friday's exhibition, is going to be in Buffalo against that D-line and that pass rush.
Yeah, just to make sure you guys heard him correctly, Remmers, Remmers. We're talking to John Jones of the Charlotte Observer. Devin Funchess, as receiver they took early in the draft to pair with Kelvin Benjamin. How's he looked?
Just like I said, it's been quiet for Michael Orr, and that's good for him. I haven't really reported much on Devin Funchess because there hasn't been much to say. Now, I don't know if that's because the ball hasn't necessarily been going his way. I haven't really seen him drop many passes, but I haven't seen him do anything so outstanding that I need to get out my phone and tweet that out to the masses. He's been okay so far, but if he came into camp as the default number 2, he hasn't really done anything to make sure he has a stranglehold on that number 2 spot. So he's still learning the offense. He's still trying to figure it out. But the Panthers he's going to get his snaps with the Panthers because at 6'4" across the way, a 6'5" Kelvin Benjamin, that's a matchup nightmare for opponents.
All right, now, Ron Rivera, I think people have forgotten this. That Giants game in 2013, he was basically coaching for his job. They went on that crazy run. Then last year, it wasn't a very good team, but somebody had to win that division. How secure is he this season?
I think he's secure because the Panthers have done something that no team in the NFC South has ever done, and they've won the division in back-to-back seasons. You know, you got Dave Gettleman, who everyone, the general manager, everyone thought, you know, is this Ron's guy? Or excuse me, is this Dave's guy? Is Cam Dave's guy? And now, after a couple of years, back-to-back division champs, you got 55,000 people showing up to a glorified practice the other day in the stadium. There's a lot of buzz around this team, and I don't think, knowing the owner, Jerry Richardson, you know, you're finally getting something. You're getting some return on an investment after 21 years. Yes, they've had a couple of good seasons, but they've never put together 2 seasons like they have the past 2 seasons. So I think that Ron, you know, if they can keep things okay, if they don't completely implode, like I don't think it's going to happen because this division shouldn't be good again for a second consecutive year, I think that he's going to be safe this year.
All right, now Cam Newton signed the $103 million extension. That's a big thing for any player. But the pressure on that team is always the pressure on Cam Newton. If they do well, who knows what the reason is. If they do poorly, it's probably going to be Cam Newton's fault. What's the pressure level feeling like now that he's gotten the money?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I'm glad you said it. I mean, it's what can you do for me now? And everyone kind of sees over these past couple of years as they've been building this roster that they are not on the Seattle or Green Bay tier. Those are the top 2 teams in the NFC, and no one's going to disagree with me on that. But, you know, the Panthers are right there with those Arizona Cardinals, basically, on that second tier, near the top of that second tier. Well, now it's time to get up there with Seattle. They've played them tight the past 4 times they've played them. They've lost in all 4 of those times. Russell Wilson continues to beat the Carolina Panthers. So now is the time that they have to win, and they're going to go up to Seattle in mid-October, and that's going to be a great litmus test. They're also going to be playing the Indianapolis Colts at home. They got Philadelphia at home. Green Bay comes to Charlotte. So they got 4 games right there in the middle of their schedule that is really going to show us what kind of team this is. You go back to that 2013 season when this team played New England at San Francisco and played Atlanta, and they went and played very well against them, and then we found out, oh, this team really can go 12-4 like they did. This is that same kind of stretch where we're going to find out if this team is going to be a 10, 11, 12-win team, or if this is going to be another 8-8 team that sneaks into the playoffs because this division is so bad.
All right, the young man does good work. Jonathan Jones of the Charlotte Observer covering the Carolina Panthers. My man, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Bo.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNradio.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the right time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. All guests join us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Thanks to John Jones of the Charlotte Observer for joining us last segment, talking about Cam Newton out there fighting like Anthony Mason.
Well, we can't go nowhere with him.
You know, always fighting. That dude who's always fighting, though, man, like that's a hard dude to have in the crew. It's often a helpful dude to have in the crew, but only when you get to call him just for the fight. Like the fight you know is coming, not the fight that he's been preparing for. Anyway, Hall of Fame induction ceremony was this weekend. They put a lot of dudes in there. Feeling kind of old because I think I remembered all of their careers as they played. They didn't put the old-timer in there. Oh, no. They had the one dude who went up there with Fran Tarkenton. Otherwise, all in the wheelhouse, Jack. Like, I'm not learning anything new at the Hall of Fame anymore.
Like, when you can remember their rookie years, their rookie seasons, that's when you know you're getting up there.
Like, not like remember a little bit. Like, Jerome Bettis almost won the rushing title in 1993. I remember it like it was yesterday. Tim Brown. I remember him on Tecmo Bowl. Yeah, dude. Like it's a bunch of them. But next year's going to be interesting because Terrell Owens is on the ballot for next year. I got a feeling my colleagues are going to hate on him. Shannon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, though.
Well, here's the thing about the Hall of Fame is that the Hall of Fame is annually very, very tricky on how they deal with receivers. Like, I have no idea how they decide what receiver should or should not get in and when that receiver should. Terrell Owens has 153 touchdown catches. You have 153 touchdowns in the NFL. I feel pretty confident saying you, sir, are a Hall of Famer. Like, I don't feel like there's anything else to discuss at that point. Terrell Owens is 5th all-time in touchdowns. Ahead of him, Randy Moss, LaDainian Tomlinson, Emmitt Smith, and Jerry Rice. That's 2 first-ballot Hall of Famers. One dude who will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer is Tomlinson. And Randy Moss, who, I mean, Shannon, you can kind of tell him about Randy Moss and how this program is probably going to go as it relates to Randy Moss whenever he comes up in conversation.
Yeah, we're pro Randy Moss here.
All day. All day, pro Randy Moss. It has nothing to do with the fact that I was the executive producer of the Rand University, 30 for 30, directed by Marquise Daisy, about Randy Moss and his life in West Virginia. Stunt. No, that's not why we're pro Randy Moss. We were pro Randy Moss before that. We're about that life. I come to find that the people who don't like Randy Moss, I don't like them very much either. And guess what? They're probably going to try to hate on Randy Moss when his time comes up too. They probably are. But T.O.'s a no-brainer Hall of Famer. Like, I've heard people say that they don't think he is, and I'm like, I need you to explain to me how it is that you came to that conclusion. Like, seriously, what do you have? And I got nothing other than the fact, well, people don't like T.O., and I think that people will point to the fact that he does have one of the most ironic facets to his game that anybody's ever had, which is he is a great receiver who did not have even good hands. Like, you just kind of had to take it in the wash. Like, yeah, T.O.'s going to drop some passes. Nobody likes the fact that T.O.'s going to drop some passes. But I felt like people held it against him like he didn't do anything else. Like, all you got from T.O. was drop passes. And that wasn't it. Like, this is that dude. But I hear...
Rumor has it.
I hear there's this other guy who is going to be on the ballot for the Hall of Fame next year. It's tricky. Like, I don't know his name. I've never heard of. Like,
Wait a minute. You're not talking about me? I'm the one that's supposed to be in the Hall of Fame. Ask about me, fool.
Shannon, who are we even talking about?
I have no idea.
Is it
No.
Number 80?
Nope, not him.
But we got to tell the people who we're talking about.
Just know he caught some footballs.
Well,
from what I was told.
Well, there's an unfortunate situation for you right now, sir. We have to explain to the people who are listening on the radio who we are talking about. And while I am not the type to, shall we say, pull rank, you're going to have to go ahead and tell them who we're talking about.
This guy goes by the name of Harvin, I think it is.
Harvin? Percy Harvin?
No, not him.
Who?
Harvin Marison?
Oh, Harvin Marison?
Yeah.
Why you got me out here talking about Harvin Marison? You just told me it's going to be somebody in the Hall of Fame.
You told me to say it. You told me to say it.
But you
know I didn't want to say it.
But you told me to talk about You told me to talk about him, and you did not tell me that was who we were talking about. We do not talk about him.
You pulled rank. I was like, we're going to talk about that one guy.
But we had to tell people who we were talking about, and I wasn't going to say it.
And you know he's listening.
And I'm not telling him nothing. Look, I don't even really know who it is that we're talking about. But I will say this, in spite of the fact that I don't know who it is that we're talking about. T.O.'s whole career, everybody wished T.O. would be a little quieter, right? Everybody got tired of T.O. making all that noise. You got tired of T.O. complaining as if you the one that had to work with him, right? Everybody had all those things to say about T.O. And when they said that about T.O., what did they always say when this other guy played? Why can't more receivers be just like... Say it, Shannon.
That guy.
Who?
I already did it once. No.
Hey.
Harvin.
Yeah. Why can't they be more like him? All he does is go out there and play. He doesn't say anything to anybody. Why can't guys like Terrell Owens be more like
Harvin Marison?
Why can't they be more like him? Anybody telling T.O. that now? Anybody? I'm just asking. I got a couple questions, though. These are serious questions. So, if
Harvin Marison
if he were to get into the Hall of Fame, right? I think we all agree it would be the shortest speech of all time. A speech, by the way, that I would not watch or listen to because I ain't heard nothing. Okay?
I haven't seen anything.
I ain't
seen nothing.
I ain't seen a thing, right? Would he wear slacks or would he wear jeans? Like, this one dude, I can't tell you who it was, but he was inducted into the Colts Ring of Honor. I don't even know if that dude ironed his shirt. He just had on, I think it was a button-up and a pair of jeans. There was no evidence of starch. There was no shirt tucking. It was none of that. You think that's how it goes for the Hall of Fame?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And who's going to tell him not
Who's going to tell him? Excuse me, sir, we got a dress code. Who's going to tell him? They going to give him a blazer? You know? So who's going to tell him? Because I tell you who it ain't. It ain't me. That's going to be mad awkward, right? And the reason it's going to be mad awkward is that from what I can tell,
Harvin Marison,
he just kicks it in Philly. Like, it ain't like he's hanging out, going to all the NFL functions and stuff like that. Like, for a lot of people, this is going to be the first time that they kicked it with him since, people started talking.
Right.
I wasn't one of those people.
Just to get that out there.
Yeah, why would I do that? I mean, he ain't done nothing to me. I ain't had no reason to talk about him. None whatsoever. Like, do you know who has the record for the most receptions in an NFL season? Because I don't. I have no idea. You know what quarterback wide receiver pair has the most touchdown connections of all time?
You got me.
Peyton Manning throwing the ball up in the air and catching it himself. That's what that is. T.O., why can't you be more like that other guy?
Bomani
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the right time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. You can send me a tweet at the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. That is at Bomani_Jones. Now, I want to explain something to you real quick for those of you listening to the show, because I think there's some things that are helpful for you to understand, like when you listen. And I don't think that people there's certain things that I think are pretty benign to explain to your audience about how this media sausage is made that's important for people to understand. So every outlet, publication, whatever it happens to be, has its own standards of what they will and will not report. Sometimes it's an entire story. Sometimes it's part of the story, right? So I want to talk now about the situation with Patrick Kane in Chicago. There are some things that ESPN is willing to go with, and there's some things that they just don't think have been vetted thoroughly enough to report, so we don't talk about those things, right? So details of the allegations against Patrick Kane, I don't have for you. We're not comfortable enough here as an operation to share those over these airwaves. But the general fact that Patrick Kane has been accused of a, shall we say, pretty heinous act. I think, Shannon, that's pretty fair way to put it.
That would be accurate, yes.
He's been accused of that. There's an inquiry from an incident at his home. Now, I got to work today for Highly Questionable, and we decided that we would do as a topic whether or not this story with Patrick Kane has been undercovered. And I would make the argument that the story has been undercovered. Except, here's the thing. I'm not sure how many people listening to me right now actually know who Patrick Kane is. Patrick Kane plays for the Chicago Blackhawks. He has been on those 3 Stanley Cup winning teams. He's rapidly approaching that Chicago Mount Rushmore of stars. And you think about the fact that at 26, a hockey player could play 15 more years. They play forever, right? So, this is that guy in that city, and there's a serious charge hanging over, and he's one of the biggest stars in the NHL. It's not like he's just a local hero. He's one of the biggest stars in the NHL, playing in one of the largest cities in America, and we're being extra, extra careful about this to the point where I think a lot of people are probably hearing about this for the first time here. Now, the Buffalo News has reported on this in some ways, by the way, that have been, irresponsible, that there's no other way to put it, have been irresponsible. But here's the thing I was wondering about this. Hockey. If we don't care about hockey when people play hockey, are we then supposed to care when the people who do play hockey get in trouble? What on the positive end could Patrick Kane possibly do to get himself a mention on this radio program? What could it be? I don't really have an answer for that. They could sweep the Stanley Cup playoffs. He could break Wayne Gretzky's goal-scoring record. I ain't talking about it. I'm not. And I don't know who else is. That would get a SportsCenter mention or something like that. It might even lead the show. He might become a bit of a phenomenon of sorts, and people might get into it. But we don't care about hockey, so I've never been exactly sure how much we're supposed to care about hockey players. I don't know exactly how that one is supposed to go. Now, I know that in Chicago, where they do care about hockey, and they certainly care about the Blackhawks, and damn sure care about Patrick Kane, this is a topic of discussion. In Canada, where they care about hockey, this is a big topic of discussion. I'm not exactly sure when it's supposed to become a topic of discussion here, or on another level, why I would be so concerned with whether or not it is a topic of discussion. And what I mean by why I would be so concerned is I think we all agree that in the last few years, in fact, very, very recently, a lot of us have kind of had road to Damascus moments as it relates to crimes against women. And we approach them in a way that we had not before. I think that we're more conscientious of these things now than we were before. Than we were as recently as 3 or 4 years ago. We care more about those things. As a result, I think that there are a lot of people who are concerned, and I consider myself to be among those people who are concerned, who recognize the value of the platform that we have to bring attention to a crime that, quite honestly, we'd have not paid enough attention to. Like, we're in a position to do that. But what's it mean when you're in a position to do that and you're doing that and it's the name of a person that you're not even sure the majority of your audience actually cares about? I'm not exactly sure where that line goes. Like, I honestly don't know what it is. Because, like, I get it. If you're in Canada, this is all over the place. Like, this is the thing. This is your sport. This is what you care about. Shannon, we ain't going to talk about no hockey on this show.
Right.
We're not. Although I do think, did I talk about hockey that time that dude got caught trying to take that cocaine into that club in Las Vegas? I can't remember. I sure meant to because that story was funny. But that's about it. Get caught with some cocaine. I might talk about your hockey on my show. No, but I think that that's a legitimate question. Like, if I was running the NHL and listening to this show, I would call and be like, so how is it that X, Y, and Z happens and you're nowhere to be found, and then this comes up, and now you got something to say? Like, I'm a graduate of a historically black college. Shannon, you are also, and it seems like the only way we can get in the news is if somebody gets beat up in the band.
Right.
And I say the same thing every time. All these different things that go on and nobody's got a word to say, but this dude get beat up in the band, and all of a sudden you want to come in with your cameras. Like, in a way, it almost feels like that. But in another, I can't ignore what appears to be a certain level of hypocrisy that's at play here. And here's what I mean. Gary Bettman was talking about player conduct. This is like within the last year. This is last September, where Gary Bettman was talking about player conduct. And, you know, everybody, NFL's got their rules, you know, their regulations and everything, and this is on the heels of Ray Rice. And this is what Gary Bettman said about enacting a conduct policy, because the NHL doesn't have a conduct policy at all. And he says, you do the best you can, and that's something in areas that are important we've tried to be proactive. It doesn't mean that things are going to happen in any league, in any business, in any situation that you can't control, but we try to address issues head on, and we try to do the right thing on a consistent basis. Based on our experience to date, we believe that the appropriate procedures are in effect, that we can do what we need to do on a case-by-case basis. I am extraordinarily proud of our players and how they conduct themselves. If and when something needs to be addressed in terms of discipline, it will be. But more importantly, we try to focus with the Players Association on educating and counseling. And hey, I don't really have a problem with the idea that you focus on education and counseling. I'm just saying that's the only league where the commissioner could get away with saying something like that. And it isn't like hockey players never get arrested, right? It's not like hockey players never get in trouble. But he could get away with saying that only because it is that league. Like, there's a benefit of the doubt that is being afforded to those players that could only happen in that league. And it can only happen in that league because there's a media around that league that affords the same benefit of the doubt. That's the only way that that winds up happening. Can you imagine if Roger Goodell said, yeah, actually, we're just going to try to teach these guys and counsel them? That's it. Yeah. That's all. That's all we're going to do.
That wouldn't have went over well.
Yeah. That's it. That's not going to go. You imagine Adam Silver saying that? Because look, Adam Silver's players don't get into trouble that much. Like, think about how often NBA players actually get in trouble. It doesn't happen that much. Like, somebody will be like, well, Mike Scott just got pulled over with all them drugs last week. Yeah, okay. But you really can't name how often. It doesn't happen with those guys that much. But that dude could never get away with giving somebody that kind of benefit of the doubt. And in a lot of ways, Patrick Kane, who, oh, by the way, caught a charge in 2009 for beating up a taxi cab driver, is getting a certain benefit of the doubt from lots of parties, okay? The local newspapers got some questions. However, everybody else is just like, hey, we'll wait and see. And if you want to wait and see, that's cool, right? Just acknowledge that we don't do this all the time. That's not how this works all the time. Like, I did Highly Questionable today, and Dan was saying, Dan Levitar, my co-host, he was saying that this all changed with Ben Roethlisberger. That with Roethlisberger, we went with an allegation, and we never done that before. But that's not true. Like, maybe not with this crime, but at Richard Jewell, the late Richard Jewell, you remember him, the hero of the Centennial Olympic Park bombing, who then was the number one suspect in that bombing, and everybody camped out in his yard and around his house and everything else, and then it turned out it wasn't him? That That was just an allegation. We didn't have anything there. We camped out in his yard. O.J. Simpson, before the Bronco chase, they were in O.J. Simpson's face talking about, did you do it and everything else? Like, we've done this before. This isn't just like some measure of the media run amok that's now recalibrating itself. For whatever reason, this guy gets a benefit of the doubt that other people don't. I don't know why. I'm not casting any aspersions necessarily. But I don't, actually, yes, I am. What am I saying? I said that you get the benefit of the doubt in the NHL in a way that you can't get in any other league. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Tell me I'm wrong, though.
Bomani.
Welcome back to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. We have got Jeremy Fowler of ESPN.com joining us next segment. Jeremy Fowler joining us to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Figure you guys be into that sort of thing, given that we now have artificial football to satiate your desire for the real thing. It's kind of like a placebo of sorts, but you guys like it. It's what you're about. You're into it. All y'all need is some dudes in some tight pants and some pads, and y'all are happy no matter what. Hey, all depends on what you're into, huh? 888-729-3776 is the telephone number. Hey, man, you guys look up and realize that Tristan Thompson still hasn't been signed? Like, remember how we were talking about how LeBron was all in charge? And all LeBron's buddies are going to get taken care of and everything else? And Tristan Thompson, he got the same agent as LeBron, and, he was in the letter and everything else. Tristan Thompson still doesn't have a contract. And now we've reached the point where Tristan Thompson's agent, Rich Paul, who is LeBron James' agent, is saying that if they can't come to a resolution, that's fine. He'll sign the qualifying offer, and then he'll become a free agent, which had always seemed like a hollow threat, right? Guys very rarely take the qualifying offer. Guys sign the first extension and then play contracts out, and then the fun comes on the second one. Although, like LeBron, people talk about LeBron leaving Cleveland. He signed an extension because everybody signs the first extension. Greg Monroe did not sign the first extension. Like, Greg Monroe took the qualifying offer and got himself out of Detroit after that year. So, like, if Tristan Thompson says that he's going to do that, then chances are he's going to wind up being gone. Like, that's his plan, that's his program. He's going to be rolling out. Shannon, how all those other dudes get their money from Cleveland? How Mo Williams got a contract and Tristan Thompson does not?
He must have been sitting back, look mad. Wait a minute, hold up. This guy got signed?
Dude, the problem with restricted free agency for a lot of these guys is those teams know not to waste their time making an offer to Tristan Thompson that he's just going to match. They're not going to do that. And this, for Rich Paul, I think that this is a situation where being a relatively new agent becomes an issue, right? So there are only two teams who could give Tristan Thompson an offer sheet for the max. There are only two. They have the cap space to do it. The 76ers and the Blazers, right? Now, the 76ers, God knows they wouldn't do anything like that. They might mess around and have to take a good player and, like, pay him a lot of money.
And win some games?
Yeah, man, they're not going to do that.
Slow down with all of this.
Like, we don't need a glue guy. We ain't got nothing to put together. Like they're not doing that. But the other one is the Blazers. The Blazers had that $16 million of cap space. And see, Rich Paul can't get on the phone. And this isn't a knock on him, by the way. This is just a matter of him kind of being new to this. He can't get on the phone and figure out a way to get Portland to do him this solid and give him this offer that is obviously going to be matched. I tell you who could, though. David Falk. Like, if worst comes to worst, and David Falk needs to get something done, David Falk can get the Portland Trail Blazers to waste their time putting together an offer sheet. That's what he did with Roy Hibbert. You remember when Hibbert got that offer sheet from Portland and then Indiana matched it? That was David Falk getting them to work up an offer sheet that everybody knew was going to be matched. That's not the easiest thing to do. And Thompson wound up in a situation with a team that doesn't really have cap space like that, and they're paying that tax. Because there's guys like Reggie Jackson. Nobody gave Reggie Jackson an offer. Detroit just gave him his money. Like, they're dudes like that. I don't know how Enes Kanter, was it Portland that gave Enes Kanter that offer sheet that Oklahoma City matched?
Yeah.
Like, apparently Portland just out here just doing solids for people. Like, Enes, you trying to make some money, man? We got you, bro. We got you, man. Look, just go ahead and sign this, man. You get paid regardless, bro, even if it's not us. Like, that's what Portland is. Portland's the dude that's like, I want to see you happy, even if it's not with me.
Portland is a check cashing place.
Yes. That's it. That's it. Like, I hope they get something on the back end for this. Right? I hope they, because somebody in legal is salty as hell. I got to draw up this contract for no damn reason. He ain't coming.
Look, I'll get you your money. You won't even need 2 forms of ID.
Right, and they're going to put me on a deadline? You know? You going to rush me? But seriously, that's where Thompson's at, though. His guy is not in a position to massage that from somebody else. And I bet you in 5 or 10 years, Rich Paul will be able to do that. You got clients that play for more teams. You have more of these conversations. You can go ahead and make that happen, right? Because, hey, Rich Paul got that money for Eric Bledsoe, and I never thought that was possible. As late as it had gotten, and nobody was out there making offers, they got the money. The problem for Cleveland is paying Tristan Thompson $16 million a year is like paying Tristan Thompson like $50 million a year because of the tax. Like, it ain't that high, but it's a lot.
That's a lot of money for some hustle.
But it's hard to find hustle. Like, it's hard to find an energy guy with elite level talents. And he has them. It's not like he's one of these guys that's working in spite of his physical limitations. He just ain't got no offensive game. Like, that's it.
I mean, he's a good rebounder, a good offensive rebounder, second chance points and all of that stuff. But if you're going to be playing this guy, he's going to have to deliver at both ends of the court. And right now, he's unable to do so.
Yeah, but for Cleveland, he's worth that money because they do kind of need him. They need it. Like, if he's your third, I mean, like, is he their third big? He's their 5 when they go small. Depending upon how much you can play Mozgov based on the lineups, you put him out there with Mozgov, you kind of can't. Like with Kevin Love, you can do something with him as your small ball 5, and you can put him in his spots at power forward and go offensive rebound.
I get the feeling that Cleveland's not trying to pay a guy $16 million to come off the bench either. Because if you're paying him that much, you're paying him starter money.
Right,
you already have Love there.
But, like, the market's about to recalibrate. And the other thing for Cleveland is, like, if they do try to get Tristan Thompson to sign after next season, that's when the cap's going to explode. And this $16 million a year, you ain't getting no Tristan Thompsons for no $16 million a year at that point. It's not going to be there. It's just not. But I thought LeBron was able to get his boys these deals. Like, I'm as surprised as everybody else. Like, I'm not saying that just flippantly. I thought that he was going to get it done just because he was down with LeBron. But Dan Gilbert apparently was like, yo, this costs too much money. Or he called LeBron and explained to him, like, look, man, game recognized game, bro. You got to realize what's going on here. I'm doing the best I can, but, you know, it's a little tricky. And meanwhile, Tristan Thompson calling Rich Paul, I thought you said we had them by the hell. On the top of his head. Stop being like that.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNradio.com.